Yo, what's good? It's Mastermind MMA, and this video is going to be on Nick Diaz. Yeah, I said that right. Nick, not Nate Diaz. Dana White had an interview with TMZ Sports, and in that interview, he was talking about Nick making a comeback. He said, I think Nick Diaz is interested in fighting right now. We'll see. We'll see how this plays out. This year, the rest of this year, nothing but great fights coming up. So hopefully we can make a couple of those. And, you know how people do that thing like Dana blank White, like the nickname. It should be Dana. We'll see how this thing plays out, White, because that's all what he says, man. That's like the safe answer. And I mean, if he's bringing it up, there has to be talks. You know what I mean? But the thing is, there's always been talks. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think if it was behind the scenes or not. Nah, I'm pretty sure in one of my videos, the homie Jamari told me, Scrap Pack Zone, he was saying that Nick was in talks to fight Bisping before GSP came back. Yeah, it was definitely in one of the videos, so I could say it. Yeah, GSP, and I mean before GSP came in the picture, it was Nick Diaz versus Bisping. That was the talk of the return fight. So you know, if they bring Nick back, man, it's got to be a big money fight. You know, Nick and Nate, both of them are just bigger than the rankings. They're bigger than the belt, essentially. I feel like Nick or Nate Diaz are one of the few fighters that could headline a pay-per-view without a belt. You know, not even former champions could do that. If Luke Rockhold can headline a pay-per-view now. I'm trying to think, you know, just an abundance of examples, you know what I mean? Once you lost that sauce, you can't get it, you know what I mean? In the words of Big Shaq,
we don't force the sauce.
And I can't say it any better than that. You don't force the sauce. You can't. You either got it or you don't, man. And bro, the Diaz brothers are just they just got it. You know what I mean? You know, McGregor, if he lost the belt, I mean, he kind of already proven he's got that sauce a little bit. You know what I mean? Because he lost that Nate Diaz fight, and he came back and still did numbers on the rematch. We'll see if McGregor goes on a skid, and you know, if some holes are poked through the hype, if he could still be that draw. Because, you know, in boxing, we have the legends that go and they stay legends, but we're accepting of their decline. You know, like the Bernard Hopkins, the Roy Jones Jr.'s. We still hold them in legend status, and we kind of let them operate out of respect of what they've done. And we had that with certain fighters, but a lot of fighters lost that prestige. You know what I mean? Anderson Silva went from being the GOAT to like lots of shit coming into question. You know what I mean? I would say honestly, bro, GSP is kind of the only golden era MMA fighter that's unscathed and actually came back in like this new era and did his thing. And what I say, it's what I call the golden era. What I call the golden era of MMA is the streaking champions. I've talked about this before. When Anderson Silva, GSP, John Jones, Cain Velasquez, Frankie Edgar, Dominic Cruz, Jose Aldo. I know Frankie wasn't like that long reigning, but like at that moment in time where those guys are champions, we know the three GOAT contenders. Jones, GSP, Silva. Still to this day, conversations they're in conversation, but lots of extracurricular activities involved in there, and a lot of asterisks in there. So that's my golden era. I would call like the beginnings, like the prime era, the beginning era, like the Genesis era, where you had fucking Hoist Gracie and Ken Shamrock and all that, and then up until the Zuffa era, and then you got when Zuffa bought it, then that kind of started the golden era, and now we're in this new era where you're having your young champions come up, your Cody's, your although he's not champ anymore, but you get what I'm saying. Like the young kids are coming into the game now, your Gastelums and all that. So now it's the next generation of MMA, and GSP is really the only one who's still operating in there. And fuck, man, you never know. GSP versus Nick Diaz could still do numbers. A rematch. Nick Diaz versus Nick Diaz versus Bisping would still probably do pretty decent. Not that great, but that's just some of the matchups you could make. I think that it's gonna take a lot to bring Nick back. It's gonna have to be well worth his time. And you're gonna have to let Nick be Nick. He can't be in all this like checking USADA bullshit. We know he's blowing down. That's about it. So we know the Diaz brothers are good. So we know they have too much integrity to cheat. And I feel like as long as they could pay him and pay him a fair rate, not necessarily what he's asking, because we don't know what he's asking, but what he's really worth. Give him what he's worth and let him do his thing and let him come back, and you got another player in the game. You know what I mean? So last time we saw him was against that Silva fight, and that wasn't that good of a look. So Nick Diaz coming back, that could definitely do numbers wherever you put it. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's my thoughts on it. I don't know when he's coming back. I don't know if he's coming back. I think it's just kind of talks, and I think Dana White's kind of putting it out there to see what kind of interest it drums up, and if there's really like a lot of peak interest in it, I feel like Dana's gonna pursue it more and be more willing to kind of negotiate. But if it kind of just falls on deaf ears, I don't feel like Dana White's going to give him a low ball offer and he could take it or leave it. That's how I feel it's going to go down, depending on how people react. So I'd love to see Nick back in. If you get Nick and Nate back in the game, you got two giant players right back in. You could, putting both of them in a card with no champion, you could do well over $1 million. You know what I mean? So that's just how I feel on it. And I really don't have any much more things to add to this. So I'm going to wrap it up. You already know it's Mastermind MMA.